Welcome to the block party. My name is Seth Kushner, and fresh off a flight from Colorado and then sitting on the tarmac for an hour because of weather. And then the first thing that she wants to do when she gets off that flight is talk to me right now. And somebody that I've known for a little bit, JSB, Julie Stewart-Binks. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show. I was very excited to come talk about some lightning because that's what delayed us on the tarmac, which I felt was so fitting. Like the pilot came on, he's like, "We're being delayed by lightning." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is 100% some kind of odd omen of what," and he's like, "I don't know how long it's going to be." I'm like, "Okay, this feels like this is something going on right now."
So are you telling me now you're doing stuff for the NHL on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's no private jet involved in getting you here from Colorado to Florida. You're sitting on Southwest like the rest of us, Julie.
I think I'm a little more down the chain of the NHL private jet. I believe my invite from Gary Bettman is probably in my spam inbox or something like that. I just like to, I don't want it to get to my head. Like I want it to just stay, like, I just want to still be JSB and not be like, "Oh, I'm working with the NHL." Like, obviously I'm on a private jet. So I kind of like turned down the offer in a way.
All right, listen, so I talked to you around this time last year. We were talking to you with my buddy Jeff about the Lightning Montreal series. You being a Toronto fan, you were giving us your support. We needed that. I learned a lot. That's why I didn't hate Toronto like a lot of people wanted to all year long. I was like, no, Toronto, they were cool with us. Mostly just it was always coming from you. It was all ice. Basically just said.
I think it was actually like everyone in Toronto and Canada was a Lightning fan because you guys were against the Habs. It was like, no matter what, no one wanted to see Montreal win. The people that want to see Montreal win are like my mom, because she's like, "Oh, that's good for Canada." I'm like, "No, Mom, you do not understand like the rivalries." Like, and again, actually she's from Ottawa. So like they grew up with like either Montreal or Toronto, but she was a Toronto fan. So I'm like, okay, like even when she said, "Oh, I'm cheering for Edmonton," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "What? No, like, no. Like you don't pick another Canadian team." Yeah. So I was a fan of the Lightning, and then there was just like many different, because of that, of course, but then also before then too, I hopped on the Lightning bandwagon, and there's many reasons why. As I mentioned last year, like having known Jon Cooper since back when he won the Calder Cup in 2012, I want to say, I can't remember now, but we were actually I put it out on Twitter the other day, but I was interviewing him at media day. We're all just kind of having some fun. I was asking about his pregame meal before the Stanley Cup, because that just got in my head. I was like, "Oh, do you have like a meal?" And he was like, "Yes." But he wouldn't tell me. And then I looked so stupid in this. I look stupid in a lot of things, but in this one particular instance, I asked him, "What is your pregame meal before the Stanley Cup?" He's like, "I'm not going to tell you." He's like, I just said, "Is it a grouper sandwich?" Like, I don't even know why I thought that. I was just like, that's Tampa in my mind, grouper sandwich. And he's like, "No, but part of it swims." And I was like, "Oh," and then he had to run. And I was like, "Oh man, well, good luck with that." Like, as in it, I was like, "What is it like a alligator?" Like,
have we figured it out? Do we know yet? Do we have any idea? We're gonna have to talk to Brian Breezeman to get an answer.
Then when I said, "Is it like," when I was thinking like, "Oh man, you're eating some weird stuff, like some kind of, I don't know, like a seal, I don't know," and then it's like, "No, that's like surf and turf, probably. Like he's probably having some lobster and steak, like that, not some weird animal that lives both in the water and in." I don't know, like a polar bear, like.
Wow, that would be that. You know what? He's a brilliant coach. So if he eats polar bear, we're not endorsing that. I don't want the polar bear, commission to come after us right now. I can't deal with that.
But that's like where my mind went, and I think he could tell, like on my face, I was like, "Oh wow, like how spicy of you." And he's like, "No, like part of it's in the water and part of it's out of the water." And so then anyway, he left, and then right behind us, as we were live on YouTube, Steve Mayer from the NHL was asking, like, I think, "How do you know Julie?" And they were like yelling at me because we were live on YouTube, and they're like, and he was like, "Calder Cup, we met at the Calder Cup." I was like, "Yes, everyone, we met at the Calder Cup. Jon Cooper and I did, like years and years and years ago." So having known him from them, obviously he came on my show. We drank whiskey after the first cup, and it was kind of cool to then cover Tampa and Toronto in the first round this year for TNT, which was such an odd, like, sorry to probably answer, I don't know. I'm going to just go into this because it was like the craziest like thing that I got to experience was like TNT calling me, first of all, to work for them was a dream. Secondly, then they said, you're going to cover Toronto versus either Boston or Tampa. And I was like, okay, first of all, do you know I'm from Toronto? Just to make sure you know that, like, you know, I'm obviously a journalist. I worked with the Ducks. I've covered a million things, but just so you were aware. And they're like, yeah, we like that you understand the pulse of the city, blah, blah, blah. Cool. And then I was like, man, I really hope they play Tampa because I cannot cover a Boston series. Like, I just can't, I just would be like, I can't be a journalist. It would be real tough.
You'd be like, these guys are disgusting. Back to you guys in the studio.
It'd just be like really tough. And even though I've worked with the Bruins before in their scouting combine, like back when I met Coop, like, it's just, there's a lot's happened since that moment. So when it was Tampa and Toronto, I was like, man, this is like actually really kind of odd for me because it's a team I like have grown up cheering for, and then a team that I've been cheering for because they're good, and I like the players and the people on the team, and doing a million TikToks like as Tampa. So it was kind of odd, and like the colors were like so similar. I cannot tell you, Seth, when I was here game 3 of round 1, I'm standing in the corner where like my little booth was for TNT, and I look over during warmups. I'm like, oh, there's like so many Tampa fans. And then I was looking and I was like, wait a second. And there's like a Marner on the back, and like, I was like, oh, those are Leafs fans here. But the jerseys the home jerseys are so similar. I didn't even notice they're Leaf fans.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said like throughout the series, I think on game 6 or 7, I was like, I don't know what I'm watching. My wife came in. She's like, I don't know what team's what. I go, I'll be honest with you. I agree. I was like, and then I told my buddies with the Lightning, I thought that they would just kind of jump on board and agree. And they're like, no, stupid. They're like, if we're home, we're in our white jerseys. If we're in away, we're in our, or whatever it is. And I was like, okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, but like, no, that's like no, I disagree with them. That's like, sure, yes, in like we're gonna write it out like we know what color we are when we're home or away. But like if you're watching a game and maybe you do something else for a second, you go to the bathroom, you come back, you do anything, like it's a trick to your brain, like always, no matter what. And I actually asked, because my mom, bringing her up again, obviously, because she is the best, she was like, she's like, I get confused, like which one we are, because like which one we are as in Toronto, because she's like, I forget, are we the blue today, are we the white? Like, I'm like, Mom, I actually agree. If I was like watching this drunk, I'd be like, you know, if you're in a party and you look like none of us, so if you were not a fan of either team and you're watching it and you turned around and you're just like at a bar and you'd be like, yay, or like no, and like, oh wait, wrong team. So I asked Sheldon Keefe about it, like just off camera when we had these broadcast meetings. I was like, hey, just like a cue from like a coach's perspective, do you ever find yourself like kind of confused ever? And he was like, honestly, when we do video review, like we'll have our home and away clips together, and you're like, which one were we that day? Like there's just, it's the closest of any of the teams really. So it was quite fascinating.
So I have like, based off of what we just went through, I have like 9 questions to ask. So I'm going to start with what I can recall. So you were kind of going off of the Lightning and the guys that you've known and the guys that you fought over the years. So that doesn't just stop with Coach Cooper. It goes with another guy you go way back with, Pat Maroon, who you talked to at Media Day, who I've done, Julie, I've done like 110 episodes of these. This will be the first time these words have ever been uttered. Big booty mix. You got Pat Maroon, you got Pat Maroon to open up about the music. He seemed to by the way, where were you set up at this Media Day? It looked like they put you guys in just like the middle of a hallway or something like that.
It was actually the best ever because we were in a hallway. We're right in between where all the guys were at their podiums, and then also where the press conference was. So it's like, we're going to stand up, we're going to set up here, and we're going to have people kind of off to the side, exactly how we were set up. And like, even when I was talking to Joe Sakic at one point, and then Brayden Point, like I'm interviewing him. So I was interviewing Jen Botterill, and I had to be like, hey, Jen, sorry, like Brayden Point's waiting, who's so chill. And he's just actually waiting for this interview to finish. Like, this would never happen in any other sport or like anywhere. And so it's like, yeah, I gotta feel like, make you feel good, and you go off, and then Brayden, come on in. And Brayden comes in while someone's presser was finishing, and then so all the media are coming out, and then we had to like, I didn't want them to like hit Brayden either, because like obviously don't want him to be injured or anything. And so I'm like, okay, let's like go over here. It's like this weird dance where it's just like shuffling everyone. And even Jackie Redmond, who's the co-host of Stanley Cup Live, she wasn't on that day as much because she had to do NHL Network. So she joined me for a segment. We were like laughing and like hoo ha ha with like Mike Bolt from Stanley Cup Keeper. And then everyone in the press conference room just like looks at us like dead eyes, and we're like, oh my God, like is our audio being like fed into and over top of Julien Brisebois and Jon Cooper right now? Like, that's what it was. And so then we were like,
oh, it wasn't that though, right?
Well, no, but I think we were just like really loud and it was echoing in there. So that's like the problem of setting up shop outside of a press conference, is being like, and then us too being like, whatever, we're just very bubbly and loud. So, but yeah, that little particular spot, back to your big booty mix, was so funny because I asked all the guys, like, you know, standard kind of like, who's locker room DJ? And it was great because they all opened up so much in that, of course, they say Big Rig, and they're like, he's the keeper of the music, like as if like doesn't matter if you don't like it, whatever. So then when I had him on and I'm like, hey, so I hear you're the locker room DJ guy. And he's like, who told you? I'm like, literally everyone said it. And he's like, I want names. I'm like, just think of anyone on your team. Like, name someone on your team. They said that you're the locker room DJ. And then he's like, yeah, I'm pretty superstitious about it. And I was like, oh, okay, like why? And then he just went in. He went into like a long soliloquy about,
very long,
like, you know, EJ does this, sets this up, then we play this, and we do rap, we do techno, and then we do fast car coming out, which I imagine at this point has all been changed since I talked to him. But I was like, for a guy that's like doesn't want to talk about being a DJ and hates being the DJ, as he mentioned, I'm like, you went like deep dive into it. So he evidently wanted to like tell somebody about what was going on. But I found it another locker room thing, which was fascinating, was all the guys talked about Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel being like the life of the locker room. Just, they were like, they're Shoresy, if you've seen the show, very Letterkenny. Like they came in, they walked in at the trade deadline, and they were just like not quiet guys, vocal, fun, outgoing. And I'm like, man, that is so fascinating. Like, we would never know that about them, and that anyone like in that position would come in like that. You know, you would think, like, at least if I was like joining a school or a team midway through the season, especially if they just won like 2 Stanley Cups, I'd be like, I will wait my place, you know. But absolutely. Hey, that can sometimes, like, you want that new blood, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys that I've talked to this year, they feel like, you know, they've cultivated an environment that really any personality can thrive in, whether you're quiet, whether you want to be, you know, rambunctious. I hear from a lot of people that like Pointer and Cirelli like to chirp each other, you know, throughout the day. Like those guys go back and forth, and there's a lot of it. And you have like Corey Perry, who they say is somewhat quiet. Like there's so many, you know, what's funny to me is somebody said the other day, somebody goes, how many guys that are on the Lightning right now could you see working in TV? And I'm like, Belmar, I'm like Maroon. I was like, this is like Cooper. I mean, they have so much personality. When you're there doing like a media day blitz, I mean, you don't know who's coming next, do you? They just pretty much like Breesman brings them through. Is there anybody that like really stuck out to you that you got to, you know, spend a little bit of time with?
You know, it is fascinating because they are all personalities, and I found it cool when you would ask them a question, maybe because the dynamic and the vibe of like how we were doing our interviews was like very low key, much more of a conversation, not at the podium, which for those, you know, this city knows a Super Bowl well. Like, Super Bowl media day is like that times 1,000, where everyone has like a shtick and they're all doing whatever. And I feel like I was the only one that wasn't like the super professional setup. It was like, I was just going to do something. They wanted me to be, you know, it was live. We're live for like 500 hours. So I approached it as, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have to be live for 500 hours. Like, I hate my life. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I can just like do my shit, just be me and like grab people and talk to them. And I think like just being it was so much yourself, right? It's not the standard kind of stuff. And I found it interesting. They would answer questions like even Ross Colton, and I put it up on Twitter the other day where I said like, what's the phrase that like would be at like a target that would be like Jon Cooper would say, that'd be like live, laugh, love or whatever. Oh. And he was like, oh, it's we know our sets. I was like, oh, okay. Like, he's like, no matter what, he walks in the locker room, you know, after whatever period, or if we're down or whatever, he'll say it in a different way, but he always says, we know our sets. And Ross was like, I always sometimes kind of laugh, like, is it coming now or whatever? And like, okay, I was like, if that gets you going, I'm sure, whatever works, you know. But I've enjoyed covering this Tampa Bay team, and it was even talking to Brayden Point. It was so awkward with him. I'm like, hey, I was at your first ever practice in like Moose Jaw. Like, you remember me? Wink, wink. Like, you're 15 years old. That was actually 20 years ago. Oh no, 20. No, that would have been 20 years ago. He's not 35. I'm 35. You know, math gets away from you once you hit this certain age. Yeah, that was 20 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, what?
Yeah, he was like 4 then.
Yeah, but then someone told me at the media party that I was at, they're like, Brayden Point brought up that you covered him like in Moose Jaw. I was like, are you just messing with me? Because like, I don't think he would do that. But anyway, if he did, I thought that was kind of cool that like, at least it kind of came full circle. And one of the things that his coach, Mike Stothers, who's assistant coach of Anaheim Ducks now, told me was, and Sorelli pointed this out to, was like, Brayden Point just loves to sleep. All he wants to do is sleep. And Stothers would say like, he would beg, like, can I not go to school? I just want to sleep. And they're like, no, you have to go to high school. Like, you have to go to high school. Like you're 16, you know?
And, you know, you mentioned, and what, I don't know if you knew, a few years ago, I was like, maybe the year that they got swept by Columbus, Point overslept and missed a meeting. And I talked to, like, I was doing the podcast with Dan Girardi at the time at Callahan, and they're like, I'm like, what do you do when your guy's not there? And like, you try to cover up and you do their locker as much as you can, but there's only so much you can do. And so Brayden Point's pretty infamous, you know, for being a big time napper. But I'm thinking the way that he plays, he's so hard. Like, if the guy needs a nap, let the man nap.
I know, you'd be like, okay, whatever rest, like he needs to go like cryogenically freeze himself and then like be ready to like, you know, Gravedigger styles come back up. Well, Undertaker.
Listen, now you covering that series as a Toronto fan, let's go, let's just skip to the end. Game 7, you're rooting for the Leafs, right? And that's okay. And I want to know, this is serious, because right now, as we sit here and record this, the Lightning just got throttled 7-0. I'm still having a horrible Father's Day today. I told my family to completely leave me alone. Father's Day was canceled because of the way that the Lightning played last night. So I just, I totally forgot what I was going to ask you too, Julie. Like, I think
but I want to jump in there. First and foremost, I covered that series dead down the middle. Okay. I was like, no, I'm not, to be honest, and covering Tampa is a lot easier than covering Toronto. And that's not surprising. And I explain this to people as the Leafs were at the first level of the video game that they've never gotten past. So imagine every year you've never beaten that first level, whereas you're up against a team who's beaten the entire game 2 times. The demeanor and the vibe and the way they approached everything was so different. At one point, like, I actually went up to the Toronto staff and I was like, hey, I haven't introduced myself properly, just like everyone who was working there. My name's Julie. I'm with TNT, because we switched the first 2 games were ESPN, and then TNT had the 3 and 4. And I was like, I just want to introduce myself. And like, everyone was just literally like, they could not care less that I just came to say hi. And I was like, cool. And there was like an awkward girl, like going up to the cool girls lunch table or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm from Toronto. And then they're like, just not, that didn't work. And I was like, cool. So I just like walk back, like thumbs up, like, okay, see you guys later. Just trying to like get a little more warmth, because it was like very, 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 very intense. And it makes sense. There's jobs on the line. There's a lot of money on the line. They haven't gotten past the first round. Whereas like, as soon as I walk in and do stuff with Tampa, it was easy. It was easy to kind of like, hey, we want to do this or we want to do that. And the team was up for it, where it was like very different the other way. So as a journalist and as someone who's like covering a team, my thing has always been like, who's actually going to help me make my job easier? Like, who's a good story, obviously, is a good one. Like, you want best stories, best whatever, you want a good game, like all this kind of stuff. But like, who at the end of the day is going to be good to work with? Like, we're all just trying to get by each day. Okay. Like, and so I found it like actually very easy to cover as a Leafs fan. I found it easier to cover this series because I had to be unbiased, but also I was kind of like, Tampa's like very nice and lets me get stuff more so than the other team. And then as everyone in the world knows, as everyone in the world's aware, I got COVID during that round, most likely from wherever. And I have no idea. I was so safe. I was so paranoid I was going to get COVID. Boom, got COVID. And I was literally then like, I had to put my phone away and just like lie in bed and just be like a corpse. Cause I was like, I'm so depressed that I can't supposed to do game 6 and game 7. Like I was supposed to be on those 2 games. That was literally would have been the biggest moments of my life, but I had to practice gratitude.
Were you crying? Were there a lot of tears?
Did I cry? Of course I cried. I cried more just because I wasn't on the series versus like the Leafs like losing that. I was just like sitting in this bougie hotel I was in, getting my free room service because it was obviously on the bill of the company I was working for, crying my eyes out. Like, this is like the worst. Like I went 2.5 years of being like the most insane anxiety filled person of like COVID. And then like I got it. So it was pretty bummed, but it sucked because then I had a view of Scotiabank Arena for game 7 from my hotel room. So I'm like pretending to cover it because I was literally going crazy. I was like, yeah, reporting for my hotel room. There's Leafs fans out there. And then like I could hear the goal horn go off there first before seeing it on TV.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember when it was 2-1 in the third period after game 7. And it was like 1 minute left. And like, I knew they were about 20 seconds ahead. I'm like, Tampa's won this. Like, it was one of those like weird, kind of odd, eerie moments. And at that moment, because I was in isolation and I was back to being a Leafs fan, I cried. Not crying because Tampa won. That's fine. Just crying that it was like, I feel like I'm back in like, I'm back here in this bad place again.
It's a tough scene, and I'll tell you. I mean, I think up until Colorado, I thought Toronto was the best team that we had faced in the playoffs. A team that I think very easily could be in the position the Lightning are in. If a couple different things go. But what is it with Toronto fans? And I know that people hate Toronto and all that stuff for whatever reasons. But like, why is it the next day after Toronto? After they lose, and then it's John Tavares is the worst player in the history of the game. Like, why is all of a sudden do your people turn on the players like within an hour?
Oh, they turn on them so quickly. My messages actually just stopped responding to like people at all, and my messages just being like, Nylander needs to go. Tavares is the worst player in the world. Like, just all this stuff. And it's like a lot of armchair quarterbacks, armchair general managers. They're basically armchair quarterbacks because there's a lot of stuff coming, but it's just like, everyone's life has been built pent up energy around this. Right. And you're like, always for my whole, after the glory years of 2004, we got to Eastern Conference Final. It has been like a really bad rebuilding / like just absolute terror of game 7s in first round and get like scared of Boston, like all this. And so you have this identity of like this like whole culture in this whole place. It's like, I just like, no one has any belief. Like fans are just sort of like, I don't know what to do. And I was talking about my boyfriend who's a big Rangers fan, and he was, of course, pretty upset about the last round. I thought it was like going to end our relationship at one point because he was just so sad about it. I was like, do I just cheer for the Rangers so that like he doesn't like become this awful person, which he was. And he knows I've talked about it before. But I told him, I said, listen, okay, honey, like where you are right now is where the team that I grew up cheering for, that's our glory days, is where you are right now. Okay. So I'm like, put in perspective. Like, would you rather go out in the first round or would you rather go further? Do you know what I mean? Like there's like thoughts for both. Like what you don't know, you're like happy about, right? Like if you knew you're up for an amazing job or you're so close to winning the lottery, you would be really mad, right? But if you didn't know that, you wouldn't be.
Okay. All right.
Like it's an odd, like you can put that out there on a poll. Like your fans have won a lot.
Yes.
But
I think that right now, talking just the way we are right now, down 0-2, I think we all said that we would have rather just lost to Toronto and gotten it over with. Although I get paid per game here, listen, I'm not on full-time payroll or anything like that.
Hey,
I'm
yeah,
paid
I hear you.
So the deeper we go here in the playoffs, the better it is for me. So, despite everybody saying they would rather just be over like early, I'm saying let's just go and let's go until the end. So I want to know.
I think so. Yeah.
Tell me.
I think like, yeah, you get like the opportunity to like enjoy these things and you'll look back on them. And I still remember 2004 and going and honking like our cars outside and like, kids and teenagers and everyone, it's like imprinted in your head. These players will be in their heads forever. Like Matt Sundin, Domi, Tucker, like those guys like are all in my brain forever. Cause that's like what I grew up with versus like the rest.
The rest. Yeah. We don't want to talk. So can you tell me, like, I saw that you guys were up to a ton of crazy stuff in Colorado. I don't know, what's been planned out as far as like you and Jackie just are like, I'm sure you drive your producers absolutely crazy. I'm sure that they had to head over to like the, buy edibles as soon as like, they had got done working with you guys that day over in Denver. Like, what do you guys have anything specifically planned right now for being in Tampa? Or do you have to kind of just see like the lay of the land and where the fans are, and then you'll go from there?
Well, it's a great question because it's an oddly sort of time, like the timing and the series cities type thing is really interesting because there was so much time off in Denver. Like we had like 2 days, like it was like almost worse because then we had a media thing on a Thursday night. And then you have a Friday of a full hangover where you don't have to work, where now I've decided working is better than wallowing in existential dread. So I got that out of the way, figured that out.
That's a great quote, by the way. I like that. That's either therapy or you've been doing some research. That's good.
Oh, yeah. Because some people that I talked to were like, oh my gosh, I had to work at 8 a.m. the next day. I was like, and they're like, I had to work like till like 12 hours. Wow. I was like, you know what? I think that might be better than like waking up, walking aimlessly around Denver, like there was a lot of crazy homeless people that were just throwing themselves in front of like the trolleys, which are also scare the shit out of me because like from New York, I'm always jaywalking all the time. Did not jaywalk once in Denver because I'd look up on my phone, there'd be just like this tram trolley just like coming at me. I'm like, okay, I'm not built for this place. But I think then we come here and we have a game tomorrow, which is like wild. So we will have, we'll be set up, I believe. I'm not exactly sure the location. I'll have to like figure that out. We're figuring out a lot of stuff in the last minute. And then we have we have a lot of guests that will come. So we work a lot with the teams to see like who's going to be in attendance, who might want to come. So I try to then leverage some of the contacts I have that might be in the area, might be interested, like maybe if we can get them tickets if they're a big enough game, by also saying, come on our show.
What have you heard, by the way? Because that's kind of like, so we do, who doesn't do a pre and post game show? I do with my buddy JP for the Lightning. We do a pregame show and they always want us to have a guest and we go, okay, just tell us. Cause we always see on the Jumbotron in the middle of the game, Buccaneers there or Gronk. And it's like, nobody tells us ahead of time who's going to be there. Apparently the celebrities just show up. So have they given you anything to work with?
No. Okay. That's great. I'm really glad you said that. Cause like, I think that's now what I'm finding out is it's a secret. We're not a secret, but there's not really like a direct pipeline of figuring out who's going to be there. And some of that's on purpose because if like Bettman invites them, you do not know. And they're not put on the Jumbotron.
Right.
Allegedly, and I don't even know if this is actually true, but I heard that Peyton Manning was at game 1.
Wow.
which would have helped me a whole lot because I was trying to get Peyton Manning to do kind of like a Drinks with Binks type thing in Denver. Because I know a couple people that work with him. And I was like, you know what? I got this day off. Maybe I'll do something with Peyton, try to do something. I'll pay him my own money. I'll pay him my own hard-earned JSB cash just to like sit down with me for 5 minutes because that would be worth it. And then like I see him on TV watching a Notre Dame Texas game, like not in Denver. I was like, okay, well, I just wasted like 12 hours of headache, whatever. So then you're just trying to figure out like who's going to be here. Will they come on? Like how close? Like we were by the concert that happened last night. Yeah. The DJ Grizz, who was just really awesome. Actually, I hadn't heard of his stuff.
He's really
and then like
popular.
when he played it, he's hugely popular and he was epic and it was raining and it was like chaos and everyone was just like amazing. It was so good. And then he came and he was on and he was a ton of fun. And so then we have him because he's close there. But then I was trying to get Von Miller on the show, but like Von Miller wasn't going to come all the way to like this place that was about 10 minutes from like the arena. So you're trying to, get everyone. It's not an easy job for like wrangling celebrities.
Listen,
and
tell me, we had to do it last year and we got down, we were interviewing like janitors and the people that worked at PDQ. Like we could not get anybody, but
that's how I knew I got on the show. It was like, wow, they must really need people. I know. I guest book on Drinks with Binks and I'm like, okay, who do I know that like will do this? And it's like not going to ruin our relationship.
So I'm going to help you and I'm going to give you a heads up of celebrities that have been at the games over the past couple of years and maybe this year.
Okay.
Ric Flair apparently he's been all over the place. Bret Michaels is apparently some sort of huge Lightning fan. He flew in a couple of times last year, watched the game, flew out. He was at when the Lightning won the cup last year, that night. He was at the after party, which got a picture with him. John Travolta. Travolta is at a lot of Lightning games in a suite. So I would expect if he's in town, he might be there. Okay. And then a ton of Rays and Buccaneers. I think the Rays are playing, but you could catch pretty much one or two Buccaneers at the game each night.
I heard Leonard Fournette's a fan.
I've seen Shaq Barrett, Leonard Fournette. I know Gronk's been there. I don't think Tom Brady has officially been there. They've had all those guys there and they're all really good. They chug a beer. It gets the crowd going. The people love it. The Super Bowl champs from a couple of years ago. So I'm hoping that those names can at least. I
literally just wrote these down in a note. Ric Flair is at the top because that looks like the title, but that's just the first one there.
I think Ric Flair might be the easiest one to get. I don't know if he lives in Tampa now, but he was making the media rounds in that last week. So the Nature Boy's down to talk to anybody. I think he'd make for some great TV.
We would be great. I've done a couple of impressions of him on my show. So I'd love, and Jackie Redmond is WWE big time. So yeah, a lot of WWE guys are down here too. So that's definitely one. And then it's just figuring out like game 3 and then game 4. We do know some people that are coming to game 3. I tried to get Bruce Arians actually, because me and Bruce Arians are now big friends. So my friend Diana Rossini from NFL, ESPN NFL coverage insider, I was like, hey, I'm doing the game 1. I want to bring stuff to the broadcast different, right? Because we had a ringside report, or we had in between the benches 2 analysts and then me, but they're like, we want you to add stuff. But like everyone would have everything I've gotten. And because of COVID, like you can't go in the locker room. We can't just like chat with guys and get something. So I was like, how do I get stuff that's like completely different? And I was like, why don't I talk to Bruce Arians, like about Jon Cooper and going for a 3rd Stanley Cup? So that's like TNT in those places. They love when you bring in other sports and stuff like that. And that's also a good talking point. So Arians was great. Couldn't have been nicer talking with him because he's obviously been there, knows Coop. They both won a championship same year. And I said it on the broadcast, but he was like, he's so calculated and he doesn't get upset on the bench. Like he's always very calm and he gives players instructions versus yelling at them, which was actually a huge juxtaposition to Sheldon Keefe, who just always is consistently yelling the entire time. And Arians, I didn't get into it because it was like too much of another story, but Arians was like, I think that winning 3 cups is easier than winning 2. And I was like, okay, tell me why, Mr. Stanley Cup winning coach. And he said, because with 2, you are always thought of as like, this is so hard to do. You have a cup hangover, you're losing guys, you can't do it again. But when you do 2, it's like, well, why not do 3? Like, it's almost, you've already accomplished like the unthinkable. So you have now this elevated sense of like the ability to do something that no one's done before. I was like, oh, that's a fascinating mindset. So who knows? Bruce Arians is like horse whisperer.
Listen, let's just maybe hope that Bruce can talk to the team or something by the time this comes
out.
Let's get Tom Brady. Let's get the whole crew here.
He's not in town for game 3, but I'm going to try him again for game 4.
Okay. I like this. I like they're giving me the secrets. All right. Well, if I find out anybody else that might be in town,
we'll exchange. You know. We're just like, hey, we'll have like the car wash. Yeah.
I'm sure Brian Breesman is absolutely loving this. Okay. So I'm going to close it out with this, because I think we did not get to talk about this, and it was something I wanted to talk about when you started going into Jon Cooper, like getting the call, or however, what the process was like to start working with the NHL, because I know that you weren't doing anything with them when we talked last year, right?
Mm-hmm. No.
So tell me how this came to be. And I read some of your posts on Instagram. You could tell how much it means to you. It's the same for me. Like, I'm so grateful Lightning let me interview. I got to sit down with Jon Cooper this year. Stamkos, like, I'm so grateful I get to do it. I can sense the same with you. Tell me what that process was like, and when you found out you're going to be doing stuff with them, you know, how you reacted.
Yeah, you know what? It's so much of this crazy world and crazy career, of which I've had like lived 1,000 lives in it so far, has come from such random interactions. And like this in particular, I was at the Stadium Series in Nashville. My boyfriend and I were going to go, and then he couldn't come. So like, I was like, well, I'll just go anyway. And I was like, this sucks. I was by myself. I just got like a ticket and like sat with like in the stands, and it was freezing and I wasn't like ready for the weather, but whatever. And then like Jackie Redmond, as I mentioned, friend of mine, messaging with her, and I was like, well, if I'm here, like I should just like go out and like try to meet people and just like get back kind of into the hockey contact world if I'm gonna like be here. So we went out, and then we were just talking with I don't know if he would want me to mention his name, but I don't know why, whatever. This guy, Matt Nicholson, who's he's a big wig in broadcasting with the NHL. And we're all just like talking around. We're like, he's talking, oh, Stanley Cup Live was so great, blah, blah, blah. And me and him had met each other back when he did soccer and I did soccer. And then kind of just like, we just were messaging like afterwards, like, hey, like if Stanley Cup Live would be great. Like, I don't even actually know how. I probably said like, hey, I'd love to do Stanley. If you're doing it, like, consider me. I'm open to do whatever. I can travel my show on the road, all this. And then at that point, then they were also, NHL's doing another show, Third Period Live, and they were looking for people to do that. And so
great
like
show, great concept, by the way. That was awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it was, you know, I think you're trying to build and try stuff, which I think I really love that the NHL is trying to do. And I love that they're trying to embrace personality too, and find kind of like new people that are a part of the game. And so that was a lot of fun, even though it was like it was like the Manning cast, but like we don't have the game on, but we have like the NHL edge tracking data, which was actually like sometimes even more interesting. That's how I knew Colorado scored, was like, I thought I was watching a highlight at first in the overtime. I was like, oh no, did I just like say like Colorado just won? And then I looked at the tracking, and it was like all the little players were coming together, and I was like, they won. That means they won. So I was like, oh no, did I just get excited over a replay? Like how basic am I? And so doing that, and then they were, you know, they're just looking to build out some more programming, I guess. And it's kind of being right place, right time, and being like willing to kind of do whatever. And I'm having not been in the hockey world like directly for a while, and having done a lot of other stuff, like I've missed it a whole lot. I've been yelling at my screen when Tampa's been in the Stanley Cup Final, being like almost doing hits on the players because I know them so well. Like, oh, blah, 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 this and this, or like, even like, because I covered the Ducks for so long, I can't help but obviously see Maroon and Perry on the same line. And I was like, I told them the other day, I'm like, you got to get Getzlaf back in. Like, you guys are the top line in Anaheim, which like people wouldn't know about. And I talked to Getzlaf about both of them as well. And he was like, I found it interesting what he said about Maroon. He was like, like 6 years ago, like Maroon was almost out of the league. Like the league didn't even want him. And then he kind of figured out a way to just sort of like be whatever guy that was supposed to be on a team. And now he has, which is just so insane to think about, 3 Stanley Cups is actually like, my brain can't comprehend that. And then you have also Perry, where like Getsy was like, it'd be really nice to see Perry get a Stanley Cup after the last 2 years, of course. Like, I can't even imagine what kind of like hurt that would be like on the other side of losing it. But then also Perry learning how to become a guy that's wasn't, he was like a star in Anaheim forever, but then learning how to adapt his game, and how Coop has talked so highly of him in terms of him in the room and his, like his maturity, and even talking with him. Like, I interviewed him second intermission of like game 4, and like talking with him, I was like, man, I hadn't talked to him since 2016, 2017. The vibe around him was just so different. Like, he was just so much more cooler, calm. He felt like he's still a nervous-ish guy on camera, like, media, like that's just his personality, but he just felt different. And I was like, wow, it's kind of really interesting to see like these guys change and develop. And then also, sorry, I just want one more Ducks connection on the other side, Josh Manson and Andrew Cogliano. And so I'm always like, I like remember all of them all together. And then I'm just a loser that's like, hey, remember one? And they'll be like, no, we don't remember any of your memories, Julie.
Well, listen, I think it's important. I think it's important to go over, because you got back in the NHL and like you're thriving. You're all over the place right now. Like, you're living your dream, and it's great. It's great that you ended up going out to Nashville and networking. And I'm sure you probably didn't feel any pressure. You're probably just like, hey, I'll just go out and see what happens. And then it happened. Yeah,
I think it just to sort of like put a bow on that was like, I remember being there and being by myself and just being like, I hate my life. I'm so awkward. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm at some random bar by myself. I don't want any random dudes coming up to me, but like, what am I doing? And then I was just like, put on your big girl boots and like go out after the game, which everyone finished at like midnight. Right. And I've been there like for a while by myself. It's like, go out, do the thing, go say hi to people. Like, regardless, it'll just be good to just be there. And then like, even then ending, and it ended up being quite a night too, with like, we ran into the Tampa Bay Lightning at Tootsie's, all of them there in their their Canadian tuxedos, saw Coop, saw Sean Payton. We were like, Sean Payton was just randomly on the street with like AJ Mlesko and like Kelly Chase and Ray Whitney. Like, it felt like as if this just weird world of like everyone in the world was just sort of like at this intersection outside this bar. And Sean Payton was so cool. He was just like, hi, like, my name is Sean Payton. I'm like, hello, coach. Like, I know who you are. It was so cool. Like, that he wasn't just like too big for us randoms that he just met. So anyway, I would say like, if anyone's ever like, should you go to that thing? If you don't know anybody, whatever, like, just go. You just never know who you're going to meet and what's going to turn into something. Like, you send millions of emails to people, executives, people apply for jobs. Half of it is just like going out and meeting someone and then being like, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that thing.
Yep. I mean, that's it. It's like, you can send emails and all that a million times. You'd be like, hey, I want,
following up.
Yeah. Like, hey, I want to work for you. I'm great. Like, you got here. I'm your next guy. You're like, hey, I work for the light. Like, there's so many different things you can work. And it always ends up like you get your job through somebody, or somebody you're connected with, or somebody you had a conversation with.
Right. Just like that, like, and sure. And it's not just like, oh, you're lucky. Like, you're at a bar, you're a girl. It's like, no, like, I've worked in this league since, like 2010, God. And so it's like, just the moments, whatever they say, timing and opportunity, like, it's crazy with stuff. And I hope it keeps going. Like, I mean, I'm like you, I'm getting paid per game. So
let's go 7.
Yeah, that's why I predicted Bolts at 7. That'd be great. Although I am missing a wedding and a bachelorette party, of which they're all like, oh, if this ends in 4, like, you could come. I was like, yeah, but like, we don't kind of want it not to end in 4.
There's after stuff. You have to do after stuff. You have to do post-series coverage.
Do
not
after
going.
stuff. Yeah, I know. Because I'll be like, this is really odd to be at like a bachelorette party now, like a week into the Stanley Cup. It would just not be. It wouldn't be right.
No, I think this is going to be your life from here on out now. And I'm really happy for you. And that's awesome. And
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're doing great. And if we hear of anybody, that's in town, I will definitely let you know.
This is good. We'll partner on wrangling celebrities, which has been, as I've done my show for 2.5 years from my home. The best part of doing a show is trying to get people on it. It's the best. Okay. So everyone out there, when you watch these shows, think of the hosts and how much they have to work to get people on. Like, you had to change your whole day also because of my and everything. So on Father's Day, it's dinner time now on Father's Day. Okay, I should stop talking. You got to go to your family.
It's fine. Listen, it's all good. I canceled Father's Day because the Lightning lost 7-0. But it's Father's Day. We're gonna celebrate it when the Lightning win on Monday.
Father's Day every day.
Yeah, Father's Day every day when this podcast comes out. JSBA, that just sounds so cool to call you that. Congrats, and glad you're in town. If you need anything, hit me up while you're here, and good luck with everything.
I'll come. Where will you guys be set up? Are you going to be around the rink or?
Listen, we are in around the rink. We broadcast. I don't know if you remember the Arena Football League and the Tampa Bay Storm, but we broadcast out of their old equipment closet. So yes,
that's fancy.
It looks like a torture chamber from the first Saw movie. So it's really not, we barely pick up Wi-Fi. So, so I would have
that was the best place you could get. Yeah. That was a real steal. Yeah.
That was the best place they could find. So, I'll come out and I'll look for you guys. I'm sure you guys will have a great setup. So I'm looking forward to it. No,
like we just literally have microphones and a camera, and we just go where we can also put a fence up. So someone tried to throw a beer at us the other day, which was like not cool. And that's not the first time that's happened to me on camera. But anyway, we just try to put a fence up so that people don't. That's it. We have cameras, microphone, fence. But you'll see my I'll be wearing a sparkly blazer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'll be sweating all over it.
And it'll just be a hot mess of just sparkles and sweat. And it'll be like you're at a nightclub in the 70s. So
that's what we want. That's the vibe.
Get ready.
That's the vibe that we like. Listen, thank you so much for doing this, and I hope to see you around town over the next I don't know, week and a half or whatever it takes to get us to 7 games.
Yes, we want that.